Well, let's move on to the other big talking point here on the urban debate. Today, in one of the many cases which are being heard across the country related to the Tablighi members, in one of those cases in a Delhi court, the court acquitted 36 foreign members, observing that the prosecution had failed to prove the presence of the accused inside the Markaz premises and noting contradictions in statements by its witnesses. The Delhi court acquitted 36 foreigners who were facing trial for allegedly flouting COVID guidelines while participating in a Tablighi Jamaat event in Nizamuddin in March. That was later on linked to infections in 14 states. Now, I don't need to remind you that because of the Tablighi event, all that was said about how these were the super spreaders, these people who gathered together in Nizamuddin for a few days and then traveled to different parts, were actually the reason why COVID spread in our country. And about 1,300 of them were actually booked and charged across the country, wherever they were at that point, which is why the cases are now in different places. Many of the foreign nationals opted for a settlement because they obviously had to return to wherever they were coming from. These 36 chose to go to trial, and today the court has ruled in their favor. The court said, and these are the stinging observations and part of the order, that the prosecution failed to lead any evidence of promulgation of order of section 144 of the CRPC, effectively saying that even if you say there was section 144 imposed in that area and these people broke it, you were not able to provide us of any evidence to show how you promulgated this order. The court said prosecution failed to prove the presence of these accused inside the Markaz between March 3rd and April 1st. They couldn't even prove that. They booked so many people, but they didn't know, they were not able to prove whether these people were at that location in between these days. The court said mere uploading of the order on the website shall not have the effect of promulgation. You don't expect people to go to the Delhi police website and read where all section 144 has been imposed or not. The court said, as per own admission of the state, the list couldn't be considered to be recording the correct facts, at least qua symptoms. There is no question of any violation and disobedience by the accused of the order of 144. Now, it's not just this specific case with the Delhi court, viewers. We've actually seen similar verdicts coming in from various courts. Now, the big question is, what is the reason that the police or the prosecution is not able to prove its case in any of these courts? And what is the reason that it's actually leading to the courts coming up with observations about malicious prosecution? For example, this is what was said. Attempts to maliciously prosecute the accused upon directions from the MHA. This is what the Delhi High Court said in August 2020. The MHA directed all commissioners of police and DGPs of the state to prosecute 960 foreign nationals. Initially, there were 8 accused of Markaz committee. After the MHA order, it went on to 952 as accused. But there has been no identification from witnesses. This was another stinging set of observations that came in August 2020. My simple question is this. I am not saying one side is right over the other. But I am asking a question. Did the Delhi police jump the gun? Did the government jump the gun? Or was it a botched up investigation and a botched up probe? If case after case you are struggling to prove it, is it a case of botched up probe? Let's say good evening to the panelists who are joining us right now. Mr. Neeraj Kumar, former Commissioner of Delhi Police, joins us this evening. Kailash Vastev, Senior Advocate, with us this evening. I've also got Geeta Luthra, Senior Advocate with the Supreme Court, and Deeptiman Tiwari, Senior Assistant Editor of the Indian Express, If I can just go across to Deeptiman. Deeptiman, the charges were really everything from flouting the visa conditions to flouting the COVID guidelines and the Section 144 that has been imposed, to putting lives of other people at risk because you're spreading the infection. There were several serious charges. Now, you've tracked this case very closely. Is it a case of an over-enthusiastic police, or maybe they were not able to prove these cases then?
Prima facie, if you look at it and the way this case has gone on, and if you read the judgment and the entire progression of the case, you will realize that the prosecution could not prove its case because it probably did not have a case. Now, let's see what happened in this case. In March, this entire Markaz episode broke out in the headlines, and there was this massive vilification both in the social media as well as on certain news channels about how Tablighi Jamaat members were spreading corona, and some even went on to the extent of saying that they were doing it deliberately. And there were these images of people licking plates and spoons, apparently to spread the disease. Now, taking cognizance of all of this, Ministry of Home Affairs wrote letters to all states to take cognizance of not only that this congregation was in violation of Disaster Management Act and Epidemic Diseases Act, but also that all these people had violated visa rules, at least all the foreigners who had gathered there or those that had gone across the country. Now, the prosecution could not even get charges framed under the Foreigners Act. Look at the case. In all these 40, barring those who pleaded, who went into plea bargain, the prosecution could not even get charges framed under Foreigners Act. That was the main point of MHA's letter when it wrote to all states and including Delhi, that these people are in violation of visa rules because they have gone out of the markers and spread across the country, and they have engaged in proselytizing activity, which is a violation of visa norms because they had come on tourist visas. Now, what kind of prosecution case was built that even charges could not be framed? The court was not even convinced that these people can be at least tried on these charges. So obviously, there was no case for the prosecution there. And now it has been proved that they could not even prove their case in Epidemic Diseases Act and Disaster Management Act. So probably, prima facie, at the very initial stage, prosecution did not have a case probably.
Yes, in fact, I want to add to this. When Bombay High Court was hearing a similar case of those who had been picked up here, Maharashtra was one of the states along with Tamil Nadu where a large number of the Tablighi Jamaat attendees were later on picked up and booked after this became a huge issue. And the Bombay High Court, while striking down 3 different cases, actually said that there is no specific allegation on foreigners spreading, propagating ideas. Visa rules place no restrictions on visiting religious places. The government tries to, a political government tries to find a scapegoat when there is a pandemic. The action of the government is mainly against Muslims, not against foreigners from other religions. And the state government acted under political compulsion. This is what was said by the Bombay High Court when they struck down 3 of these cases. The Madras High Court, while giving bail to 31 of these Tablighi members in one specific case, actually said that they were forced to sign an affidavit. Members have been in prison for over 2 months, and there is no progress in probe. There was no progress in probe. It was made out to be a big thing, and unfortunately, the probe didn't go anywhere. So, Mr. Neeraj Kumar, was this a case of jumping the gun, maybe from instructions as the court suggests, or was it at some point we just botched up our probe and couldn't gather the evidence to even prove that these guys were present there at that spot?
The court's order, whether it's the Bombay High Court or the Madras High Court or whether it is the Saket Court, excuse me, they are all very speaking orders. And it would not be proper for us to question those orders or the merits of those orders. They are in detail, and they have explained why they do not accept the charges. So it is quite evident that perhaps the cases were not made out, as has already been mentioned by a fellow panelist who has spoken before me. And B, if indeed there were, then they were not properly investigated and not properly followed up. For instance, there is this observation by the court that the order by the ACP promulgating Section 144, there was not proper dissemination of that order. And the PRO has gone on record saying that it was uploaded on the Delhi police website. Now, if the court has observed that this is not being made adequately public, I think it is well within its rights to do so, and we should accept that. So these are all learning, these are lessons that ought to be learned from the experience of these cases, that just by saying that we have promulgated 144 CRPC and upload it on the Delhi police website and not make adequate publicity, not give adequate publicity to that order, is not enough. It is not enough to press the case under 188 of the IPC. So a lot of lessons need to be learned from the failure of the prosecution in this case. Lessons in investigation, lessons in processes, in procedures, and also that we should not be jumping the gun, as you just now mentioned.
Okay, in fact, the point that you raised, I was going to ask that next, because I found this very interesting. And Mr. Kailash Vasudev, to say that, merely issuing an order and putting it on your website isn't going to be enough. You have to, how do you prove that you've promulgated this order and a Section 144 that's been imposed somewhere? Will that make it tricky for the agencies going forward? I mean, it happens on a daily basis. People are landing in Mumbai, flying in from Delhi and Goa, and they don't know that the rules have changed. They're supposed to carry a COVID test report now. So, I mean, not on the same lines, but how does the police ensure that people know what has been decided?
Good evening. This answer I will leave to Mr. Neeraj Kumar.
Yeah.
Because curfew restrictions are imposed in a particular manner. In the old days, they used to be announced over the megaphones. Today, it is different. Mr. Neeraj Kumar, you've been in the police. Can you answer this for them, please?
Yeah, indeed. You have to not only put it on the net,
That's
you
right.
have to put it in the newspapers, you have to communicate it, and you have to ensure that the message goes around, and if only by putting it on your website is not enough.
No, okay, so let me say this, Mr. Neeraj Kumar. For example, in many parts in Delhi and Mumbai, for most of the times there is a Section 144 imposed for various purposes, usually to say people can't really crowd in these sensitive areas, they can't get together or move in large numbers. But in general, people of that city don't even know about it. Sometimes it often gets misunderstood. Every time that Section 144 is renewed for the next set of 3 months or 6 months, people suddenly get extremely scared to say, oh, what just happened? So there is obviously some gap in communicating that. Now, how do we fix that communication problem?
You see, here there is a situation. In the old times, before the internet became so popular, there used to be police announcements in the local areas over megaphones. Pamphlets were distributed, and announcements were made in the press, in the print media, that there was an imposition of a Section 144 in a particular part of the city, or a particular part. Today, reliance has gone onto the internet, which doesn't take us any place. That is where the problems arise. But that apart, I want to raise another issue on your panel today. The acquittal of the people who have been charged for the spreading of the virus under the Disaster Management Act and the like, saying that there is no case made out by the prosecution. In the recent few years, there's been a very disturbing trend in the police investigations and the situations. Our premier investigation agency is the CBI. I was astonished to read that in the parliamentary panels which have held proceedings over the past 3 years, the incidence of conviction in Prevention of Corruption Act is 3%. On the overall national ratio, the conviction rate by the police has gone from 50% to 50.4%. In rape cases, the conviction rate is 27.2%. Now, see the ramifications. Tardy court proceedings on the initiation of a first information and report subsequently. You're only holding on to 3% conviction in corruption cases, 50.4% conviction in normal cases, and a 27% conviction in rape cases. So the man is in custody. He spent 5-7 years, the best years of his life, facing a prosecution which the police haven't been able to make out. What is becoming imperative today, and in the circumstances in which we are progressing in our nation, we must have a public accountability system. A policeman must answer whether an internal inquiry or an external inquiry by the police as to why the case was a case of acquittal. You must be able to tell the citizens either there was no case. If there was no case, he must get redemption. We are playing with the system. The police are playing with the system for the purposes of what benefit, I don't know. But these statistics are disturbing. 23%, 27%, 50%, that means your investigation doesn't exist. You only proceed on the basis of oral evidence. So the scientific system of investigating into a crime has been put into the bin. It is time that the police woke up to their duties rather than kowtowing to political needs and needs of the local people at that point of time. If you don't do it, you are moving into a very dangerous situation where every criminal who is really a criminal will say that forget these policemen, they're of no consequence. They can't even do appropriate prosecution.
Unless
This
I
is the
fall out
future.
of favor with the politicians.
No, I'm raising this because this is the stats and figures before the parliamentary committee
Right.
of 2017. Read the 2016-17 reports. I mean, isn't it time that we woke up? Isn't it time that we put a system in place? It's very troublesome, sir.
I want to raise another issue as well from what happened in the court, but let me take this point forward first, what Mr. Kailash Vasudev is saying. In Geeta Luthra, what percentage of these, or to what extent are these a contributor to the poor conviction rate? The fact that the police doesn't want to do a fair investigation, has lost interest, or that they are overburdened, or that the cases just go on for too long? Or is it to begin with, like Deeptiman points out in this case, to begin with, no case at all? I think you're on mute, Geeta Luthra.
Yes.
Yes.
I hope I'm unmuted.
Yes.
So there is, in rape cases, there is about a 28% conviction rate.
Correct.
In other criminal cases, there's probably a 42% odd conviction rate. So the conviction rates are low, but in other developing countries or who are on this side of the world, the conviction rates may be even lower. Now, what's the reason? The reason, according to me, is what Mr. Vasudev said: non-scientific evidence, poor investigation, tardy investigation, an attempt to do investigation only to fill numbers or to show that a crime is solved. So you would get in a person as an accused, do a whole trial against that person, convinced in your mind that he is not guilty, but that you need to show that you've solved a case. This is what is very dangerous. And this is what we have to mark out. In this case, part of the case was because there was this whole social media trial, saying people in Markaz are the ones who've come, these foreigners have come, they've spread the illness. Even the SHO, and the SHO, the court holds that the SHO has not performed brilliantly well. But the fact is that the SHO was also being targeted till he gave evidence that he was going to the
Markaz.
site every day, therefore Markaz, and that there was a contradiction which came out in his cross-examination and his statement that he was going to the Markaz. But the fact that he was going to the Markaz is very much there. The other aspect is that every person who is an officer on duty has to know that just because he is being asked to do something, he can't be doing it. So you have a statutory duty as an officer, and if you find no case is made out, then you should not file the case. You should make the record, give a closure report, and place it before your
Report.
senior officer, your superior officer, that this case is not being made out. I'm sorry, I can't find cases. These people have not been found to be COVID positive. These people were not found at the Markaz. I don't know how and why I should go to them in Chandni Mahal or wherever they were found and then make cases against them. So the whole aspect is a person who is afraid of repercussions should not do something which is in dereliction of his duty. The moment he starts derelicting and we start having a mental framework that I will be in trouble if I don't do X, Y, or because social media is saying you can't target anyone. I'm not talking of community. Everybody needed a scapegoat those days. People were very bothered by the pandemic, so people were looking for a scapegoat. And social media went viral with this scapegoat till reports started slowly emerging in a more balanced manner. But till then, the damage was done, and this has resulted in the prosecution. And what is very sad is so many people actually did plea bargaining, gave a plea of guilty.
Yes.
Gave a plea of guilty just to get rid of the whole situation. Many of them would not have been guilty like these 5 people. But many persons said, how can I sit in a foreign land for days and years to come? Let me plead guilty and finish the case. This doesn't augur well for our system.
Yes.
And that is why in plea bargaining also we have to be very careful when no case is being made out. Should we then enter a plea and permit plea bargaining and close the case on that basis? So I feel all in all, this case is a very unfortunate commentary. I'm glad that the court has given the judgment and the verdict it has. This is something which we have to appreciate. Of course, is because the accused also said we don't want to lead evidence and all those aspects. And at the stage of charge itself, the judge dropped several of the sections. So in that sense, I can only say it's a good judgment, and I can appreciate it.
In fact, we're putting together this today because I thought it was time, since so much, and you're all right, so much was said and reported on social media, on mainstream media, and it was made to believe, as if this was really the cause for why the pandemic spread. Maybe when these people traveled, but it's because we tracked them. and we tracked them down, that we found out about those cases. There would have been many other such large-scale events or people who were still traveling, until the lockdown occurred, who would have taken the virus from one place to the other, including bringing it from outside. That's how it entered our country. Allahabad High Court also, just a few days ago, was hearing a petition of a juvenile Tablighi Jamaat member who had challenged the police charge sheet filed against him. And the Allahabad High Court said that charging a person with attempt to murder for attending Tablighi Jamaat congregation in New Delhi prima facie reflects an abuse of the power of law.
Yes. Of the due process.
Yes, and the power of law to say that you attended this and then you went back home, but we are not going to charge you with murder, because you risk the lives of other people. This is what the High Court had to say. Allahabad High Court, so Bombay High Court, Madras High Court, Allahabad High Court, the Delhi courts, Delhi Saket Court, numerous examples now that have emerged. Deeptiman, again, I will come back to you, and in your opening remarks, you did say there was no case to begin with, but does it look now, or was it a case where they just went and picked up people that they suspected were present? How can it be that the police was not able to prove that these people whom we have booked and charge sheeted were even present during this time at that location?
If you read the judgment itself makes it clear how this was done. The judgment says that you built up an entire case based on a list provided by Ministry of Home Affairs. So obviously, Ministry of Home Affairs gave the police a list. We all remember at that time, when this entire thing broke out, the Ministry of Home Affairs, there were these letters surrounding which Ministry of Home Affairs had written to various states, including to Delhi and to the Delhi police, where more than 800 Tablighi Jamaat foreigners had been identified who had fanned out across the country, and there were over 200 who were still staying in the Markaz, and letters were written to all the police chiefs, and they were asked to proceed against them. So obviously, the orders to proceed came from the very top, and let's remember, Delhi police comes under Ministry of Home Affairs. So police probably, this is best to be answered by Delhi police or its spokesperson, had no choice but to proceed in the case. However, they had a choice that after investigating, if they found that there was no evidence to prosecute these people, they could have just filed a closure report and said that there is no evidence to prosecute them. Why they did not do something like that is something that only they can answer. Now, let's remember, this entire thing started with blaming Tablighi Jamaat and how they became the super spreaders, or insinuating that they were deliberately doing it. They were even called Taliban and whatnot by even spokesperson of the ruling party. But let's see what happened. How did the Tablighi case first came to the notice of the government? On March 17, the first foreigner from the Tablighi Jamaat who had traveled to Hyderabad, he was from Indonesia, he tested positive for COVID. Now then, the government realized that, okay, probably COVID has spread among Tablighi Jamaat members. And then it was only on March 21 that Ministry of Home Affairs wrote to all states, including Delhi, to identify these people and to start medically screening them or quarantining them. And their screening started only on March 26, and the evacuation started between March 26 and March 31. Now, whose responsibility was it to make these people aware of the needs or the protocols that needed to be followed during COVID? Whose responsibility was it that if there is a huge congregation at a place and you're aware of it, to evacuate them, to quarantine them, to give them proper medical screening, and to give them proper medical attention? It was that of the state. Now, the state primarily failed in its duty. Then it went around blaming people who were actually victims of a sickness, of an illness, or probably of not being properly aware. I mean, this is not a pandemic that has come and gone earlier as well. In March, probably all of us knew just as much about the pandemic as probably members of the Tablighi Jamaat. So whose responsibility was it to make people aware, to give them medical attention, and to evacuate them from that place? It was the state. It did not do so. And then it went on filing cases against people which have fallen on their face in the courts.
Mr. Neeraj Kumar, to you this question, this is not just what has happened in the Tablighi Jamaat case. Similar instances we've seen in other cases as well, where the police has gone ahead, maybe due to political compulsions or other reasons, or just widespread, social media or national media coverage, and taken action which they have not been able to prove in the court of law. Or even if you take examples, some of the examples that we are seeing right now of this new law that has come in Uttar Pradesh, what the government of Uttar Pradesh calls the love jihad law, but essentially also where they are picking up people and booking them with absolutely no case, where people who've gotten married as per their own will, gotten married before the new law came in, but all of that is secondary. You've already stopped a wedding or picked up a couple, sent them to the remand home and kept them there for days together. Now, is there a way to fix these kind of problems that we see repeatedly, where how do we stop an overzealous police department?
Well, we cannot say that this has happened in every case of quote-unquote love jihad.
Sure, absolutely.
I have read in the papers that in I think 8 cases, the police looked into the matter and said that no case was made out and therefore no case was registered. So it is not as if just because there is a political edict or a political atmosphere to do a certain thing that the police always does it. Why cases fail in courts, the numbers are, the causes are innumerable. And I could speak on it, on the causes for an hour, what all, why the police investigations do not meet the requirements of a successful prosecution. But please understand, for the past 15 days, the entire Delhi police is deployed for bandobast duties. I hear from various people that they have gone to the police station and they have not been able to find a single investigating officer who can even go to the scene of crime because they are all at the borders. The point I'm trying to make is that the police force, which has so many things on its platter, is not able to do justice to its investigation for various reasons. One of them is this, extraordinary situations. At the same time, we can go into the training, the lack of scientific aids, the lack of, prosecution support. You may have heard that abroad, most investigations are led by the prosecutors, and not by the police. That does not happen in our country. Yes, the police here, they investigate a case based on their own, the expertise that they have, and they commit several errors, not always knowingly. More often than not, unknowingly. They do not know what they are missing out on. They do not get proper supervision, proper forensic support, and so on and so forth.
Training.
Say in a case like Delhi, still, we can get the Central Forensic Science Lab backup. But you imagine in a small Mufassil town, where is the forensics backup? There is no forensic backup. Nobody ever talks about these fundamental issues that need to be addressed. We are, sending rockets and, our space missions are going to, outer space and so on. But we are lacking on basic scientific methods. Now, just recall one case, a very well-known case, where to prove a certain thing, a sample had to be sent abroad. Can you imagine? For a
Right.
simple DNA test, we did not have proper facilities in our own countries, and the samples had to be sent abroad. Now, so we require a number of efforts. We need to do a lot of things to make sure that our investigations are better, prosecutions are better. Let us also go into the kind of prosecutors we have.
Right.
Are our prosecutors, can they stand up to the defense lawyers? Can they can they argue the cases as well as they should be argued? The simple answer is no. So there are a number of things that need to be looked into. I don't know when will all that happen. I am not trying to say to justify, because right in the beginning I said these orders have come from courts. They are speaking orders. They are orders in detail. They have given reasons why the case has failed. You know, these are all unexceptionable reasons. So there is no debate on that.
Absolutely.
But in general,
Yes.
if you want to know why the quality of investigation is not what it should be, we require a lot of studies, a lot of attention, and a lot of effort from all sides to correct the situation.
No, I completely agree with you. And to your point of being overburdened, of course, there is a larger police reform which is needed, and maybe they need to be used for the right reasons and for the right cases, rather than making them running around for cases that only serve political purposes. It would also help the police departments, and not just of the Delhi police, across the country. One would say that. I am out of time. I'm going to thank all four of our panelists for joining us on this conversation. I just thought it was extremely important, because every single viewer of ours would have either watched it or somewhere read about it somewhere in social media about these 900,000 odd of Tablighi Jamaat members who were in Delhi in mid-March attending a congregation, and then they went everywhere else in the country, and they're the ones who spread it, and they were then booked for it. Yet, in no court of law so far has anybody been held responsible and been convicted of it. In fact, if anything is to go by, from Madras High Court to Bombay High Court, Allahabad High Court and Delhi courts, courts have repeatedly pulled up the investigative agencies and the police and the prosecution for not doing a fair job. To the point that Deeptiman was also raising, I want to read this from the court order, in para 41 of the court order, that says the complainant has named only 8 accused who were all part of the management committee of Markaz. However, subsequently during investigation, which has started after order dated 1st of April of the Ministry of Home Affairs, the IO has added 952 all foreign nationals persons as accused in 48 charge sheets and 11 supplementary charge sheets. Imagine the time that was utilized for 48 charge sheets and 11 supplementary charge sheets without any identification from the witnesses out of the total 2,343 people who were allegedly evacuated from Markaz premises. It is beyond comprehension of the court. The court could understand this. It is beyond comprehension of the court as to how the investigating officer could have identified 952 foreign nationals out of this 2,343 who, as per the SHO, were found flouting the guidelines without any test identification protocol, but on the basis of the list provided by the MHA. Because the list was given, and by then it had become a big story. The Delhi police, the SHO, the IO, they all went trying to maybe protect themselves, booking these people, picking them up, sharing the information across states. Other state governments were all too glad also to pick up these people, blame them for the rise in COVID cases. From Maharashtra to Tamil Nadu, that is what state government representatives would come and tell us. Well, what can we do? It's the Tablighis. They came here and they spread the COVID. Nobody asked whether we as a state, as a country, as a system, did enough to alert them and stop them from spreading the COVID infection. Thank you so much for joining us on this conversation.